My name is Bond.
James Bond. James Bond. Mr. Bond. James Bond. Have you gone mad? Let's see how badly he wants it. Get my curiosity, but what is that?
That's my little Octopussy.
Enjoy yourselves.
British secret agent James Bond 007 goes undercover for what turns out to be a high-flying mission which leads to a dramatic conclusion. Elsewhere in East Berlin, a mystery is unfolding involving a murdered British agent dressed up as a clown and a priceless Fabergé egg. Except it's a fake. James Bond follows a lead to Sotheby's where the original egg is being auctioned, only to discover the sinister Kamal Khan, who seems hell-bent to win the priceless egg at any cost. Kamal wins the bidding war, but James Bond has pulled a fast one, and now holds the real priceless egg. James Bond follows Kamal to India, where he meets his contact Vijay, who leads him to the location of Kamal Khan, where James Bond challenges Kamal to a game of backgammon with some really high stakes. Bond beats Kamal at his own game, but Kamal doesn't take it all well as his goons is sent after Bond, but he and Vijay give them the slip. The two arrive at Q Branch where they pick up a few gadgets, including a homing device, which Q places inside the priceless egg. James Bond returns to his hotel to find the lovely Magda waiting for him, and after an evening of making some memories, Magda steals the original Fabergé egg, and Bond is taken in. James Bond is held at Kamal's palace, and after a most unusual dinner, Bond escapes and tracks the egg, leading him to a secret meeting between Kamal and the warmongering Russian General Orlov. James Bond escapes but then finds himself to be human prey in a jungle manhunt. After overcoming a few jungle obstacles, James Bond manages to give them the slip. Bond follows his next lead to a remote island inhabited only by women, where he meets the mysterious Octopussy. The two discover they already have an instant connection, and Bond spends some time on the island getting to know Octopussy and her operation. But their time together is cut short. Bond fights off the attackers but uses the opportunity to slip away, where he then finds that his contact Vijay has been cut down. Bond follows a lead to Berlin, where he infiltrates the Octopussy circus. While in deep disguise, James Bond discovers the real plan between Orlov and Kamal, the detonation of a nuclear device on an American Air Force base. James Bond escapes and fights off several attackers, and then it's a race against time to get to the base before it's too late. James Bond arrives at the circus but has to go undercover. Chaos erupts, but James Bond manages to defuse the bomb with only seconds to spare. Octopussy and her women return to India to confront Kamal, but a battle erupts. James Bond along with Q arrive to save the day, but Kamal escapes, holding Octopussy as hostage. But Bond is hot on his trail, and after a high-flying aerial battle, James Bond overcomes Kamal's henchmen, rescues Octopussy in the nick of time, leaving Kamal to meet his fate. And James Bond and Octopussy sail off into the sunset. Written by George MacDonald Fraser, Richard Maybaum, and Michael Wilson. Directed by John Glenn. 1983's Octopussy. Here we go.
Yes, indeed. And 1983 was kind of an interesting year if you were a Bond fan, because they also had a competing film, Never Say Never Again, which starred, as everyone probably knows, Sean Connery.
It was the Battle of the Bonds.
Right. And this was the long-rumored remake of Thunderball from Kevin McClory, which was it was called James Bond of the Secret Service, and then it was called Warhead, and then finally Never Say Never Again. And the crazy thing was that they were going to release both these films almost like at the same time, almost the same week, which would have been, I think, a disaster. to have them both released at the same time. But Never Say Never Again ran into post-production problems, so they extended their date a few months out, and Octopussy kind of ruled the summer box office.
Yeah, and thank God, because like you said, if it was literally the same time, it could have been, it frankly could have killed the franchise, really, because if
you got to cancel each other out,
all the old school Bond fans would have said, "What? I could choose now between Moore and Connery. I'll go see Connery," not knowing whether the movie's any good or whatever. So yeah.
Yeah, and at the time, I mean, it wasn't, the internet wasn't as prevalent, it wasn't even really an internet yet, and most people didn't know that it was a remake of Thunderball. They just thought it was another, Sean Connery adventure. A lot of people didn't. I don't think really got that whole, or the background stuff of the Kevin McClory legal battle. I remember I used to get this magazine called Starlog. Which was sort of like, I
had that.
Right. I was like, sort of like, my internet back then, about what was going on in science fiction and fantasy movies and so forth. And they used to cover James Bond films. And I remember they had, both Roger Moore and Sean Connery in the cover, and it was Battle of the Bonds, Yeah.
Yep.
But I guess we should zero in on Octopussy here.
Yeah, let's talk about the clear winner, I think. I think any sane person would say. Octopussy, and no secret, it was my first Bond in a theater.
Really?
And yep, my first theater going experience. And honestly, it was easily the film that pulled me into the whole James Bond phenomenon. I think it was literally the summer. It came out in 83, so it was the summer of 84. It was on cable all summer long. I'm on summer vacation from school. It's on constantly. I'm watching it every time it's on. And I'm just loving the hell out of it. And to this day, I think it is by far the most underrated Bond film in the whole franchise. I'm not saying it's the best film, but easily the most underrated. And it blows my mind when I see it show up. But I'll see like these stupid, ranking every James Bond film from like just kind of totally random websites. Octopussy always ends up on the way bottom.
It does.
And they love to talk about, it's the one where you're dressed up like a clown.
Either that or they reference the Tarzan yell. And I've always been kind of little myth sometimes of fans, like they'll use like one little thing in a movie and just dismiss it completely. And that kind of bothers me sometimes because, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and frankly, most of the Bond films have something like that.
Yeah.
Some are a little more egregious than others, but yeah,
for sure.
And this one is sort of weird because, again, as frustrating as let's talk about it. The Tarzan yell. What's weird about that to me is I feel like it's a blight on an otherwise nearly flawless film, as opposed to other films where the jokey tone just runs deep.
Yes.
Like this one is like if you pluck that out, like if I could literally do like an edit of this film and just edit out the goofiness of that. All of the goofy parts. At least that I can think of, all the goofy parts happen in that otherwise great scene where they're doing the hunt, where Bond is the prey.
It is
that's a great.
Yeah. I think it is a little jarring, that Tarzan yell, but I don't know if you recall your theater experiences. It was, for both of us, was many years ago, but I remember that getting laughs, and it kind of worked.
Yeah.
It kind of worked in the context of it back then. Yeah.
Well, and I feel like every time we talk about the goofy, slapsticky kind of jokes that are in the Bond films, I kind of feel like 9 times out of 10, I'm sure it was a chuckle the first night. I'm sure people laughed the first night, but then like 10, 20 years later, you're like, oh, good Lord,
Yeah. I think a lot of times, a lot of movies do that. Like, they'll be like, oh, they're going to, the fans are going to love this on opening night.
Yourself.
Or opening weekend. and even if it's ill-advised, you know.
But so anyway, yeah. So I you got the Tarzan yell. It's there. Like I said, if I could do a little home edit, I could probably take that out, and that scene would probably be really tense and the way it's supposed to be. With that said, with that out of the way, I think the film is phenomenal, and honestly, I think it has a structure that surprisingly, most of the films, I don't think any of the films that I can think of really have a structure the way this one is. And what I'm referring to is the way the mystery is set up. Because the way the film opens... first of all, we probably could talk about the pre-titles.
Yes.
Which, another one that I think is spectacular.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's phenomenal.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
It's a great standalone. It's very Goldfinger-esque in the way it sort of tells its little short story. It's kind of the tail end of a previous mission... Or just a self-contained mission, I guess. And again, I love it, and I love how it's again the whole mission is to plant the bomb, and by hook or by crook, Bond somehow by the end will find a whole different way to blow up that military base. So it all sort of comes together at the end. So it works out great. The Bond girl in that scene is scorchingly attractive.
Yes.
You know, I mean, again, I'm a young 13-year-old boy watching this. And I'm like,
it's the best thing ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely incredible. So, pre-titles is aces. Then you get into the setting up of the mystery, right? And this is what I love. You open up to, you're like, what am I watching? You see a clown running through the woods at night, being chased by not one, but two knife-throwing twins. They murder the clown. The clown stumbles into the embassy and drops the egg. And so we as the viewers are like, what's that about? Like, we have no idea what that's about. And that sets the whole thing in motion. So, from there, it becomes this, following clues and doing whatever till the ultimate payoff of the story, which is, you find out who the twins are. You find out how they're involved. When James Bond comes up against the twins, you now see how this confrontation could have, transpired in the beginning. When James Bond puts on the clown makeup, you start to go, oh, just like the guy in the beginning. Now, that guy was infiltrating the circus. Now I get it. And not only does that sort of earlier mystery come together and become revealed toward the end, but it also converges at the pinnacle, the moment where this is the climax of the film. It's the ticking clock, and James Bond has to defuse this bomb, and he's come all this way, and he's had to hitch. I mean, the scenes of him just trying to make his way back to the base is awesome. Like, I love all that stuff. So now all points converge at this moment. And it's one of the most intense. I think it's easily the best use of the ticking clock I've seen in the series. Everyone is watching this moment with bated breath. And it's just tremendous. I love all of that. And I kind of don't know why most of the other Bond films, again, they figure out who the bad guy is in the first few minutes in the office.
What about Zorin himself?
Max Zorin, impossible. He's a leading French industrialist.
Again, I find that this structure is so awesome, and I don't know why they don't do it more often. But like here, it's aces, and I'll take a breath from gushing for a second.
No, I agree with all your points. Just to back up there, when the twins are chasing 006 at the beginning, dressed in the clown makeup, they also hold that too. I mean, they don't let you know it's twins right away.
Yes.
And I thought maybe that surprise could have been handled maybe just slightly better, but for what it is, it's great. Just the reveal of that and so forth, and those two guys together chasing him. And that's a great mystery too, because like you said, it intrigues you, and you want to know what happened.
Yes.
It's not like well, I don't want to spoil for like a later film where
What about Zorin himself?
Max Zorin, impossible. He's a leading French industrialist.
where it becomes all exposition, and it's just like, yeah, whatever. This is a dramatic way to get your story across.
Yeah, I mean, it really does. It pulls you in and says, and sort of like it just sort of drops this in your lap, and you're like, okay, I want to know more. I want to know why this happened. What is this that I just saw?
And I also like in this film that they let Bond be Bond.
Yes,
because I got some serious issues. Well, later on, we're gonna talk about View to a Kill in our next episode, and I have some. Well, anyway, not to spoil anything, but I think that there's some great Bond moments here, and that's important for these films. You got to have your Bond moments.
Yeah.
And if they're few and far between, it's a disappointment. But this movie has it in spades.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. And honestly, we're still sort of coming off. I mean, you heard me gush last week, 2 weeks ago, about For Your Eyes Only. And I said that really hit this kind of peak. And I feel like that peak absolutely positively continues into Octopussy and in some ways even better. And, one of the things you said, let Bond be Bond. There's a lot of that here. There's a lot of kind of lifestyle moments.
Yeah.
And one of the things I think this movie does superbly is it works with Moore's age.
Yes.
As opposed to, you know what I mean? As opposed to having him do things, and again, we'll talk next time about where his age is obviously his Achilles heel. Here, they really, really do hit that sweet spot with this one. First of all, like, as an example, the scene where he's in Sotheby's, right?
I love that
find
scene.
that to be, it's such a good scene. First of all, that is classic Ian Fleming. And I've kind of made this point in other reviews talking about some of the other films. When you see Bond going after a foe on the golf course or across the card table, again, it's a battle of wits, and it doesn't have to be guns and fists. That's not the only way you go against an opponent. In Fleming's stories, there was a lot of very interesting ways that Bond had to take on an opponent, and one of the ways was at Sotheby's at an auction house. And he's having a battle of wits with this guy who's sitting over there. I don't know who he is. I don't know what he's up to, but I know he wants something, and I'm going to, go after him. And I love that scene. And so not only is it spectacular just on its surface level, I love the little switcheroo with the egg, how he kind of, does the little, he takes the original and leaves the fake one. I mean, that is pretty amazing. And I love the fact that it kind of stands up to scrutiny, because that's one of those moments where, when you watch it, like, it's one of those times when you go back and watch it like over and over and over, and you kind of go, all right, wait, did he really do it? Did he really do it? Well, I mean, you can probably tell he probably didn't actually, but it goes all the way down, comes all the way up. So, I mean, you can see where it would have happened. So I love that too. But again, but just the setting alone, I feel like this is kind of where a more mature, seasoned Roger Moore would sort of fit right in. So I kind of find that even this, again, playing to his age in a correct way and taking advantage of his age, really. What's
great about that Sotheby's scene as well is Louis Jourdan and the sort of like his silent smoldering as Bond is bringing the price up. I think Louis Jourdan is terrific in this film.
Yes, he really is. And I think we've also gotten into discussions before about the best Bond villain to sort of play off a particular Bond at a certain. I find Louis Jourdan to be almost the perfect one for Roger Moore.
Oh yeah, it's perfect for Roger Moore. Perfect. Yes.
Yeah, I mean he's kind of it's almost like these guys, both older, both kind of comfortable. They're kind of playboys a little bit, you could say.
Right.
And Louis Jourdan is just kind of like a little more sinister version of that.
Yes.
And I find that to be like when the two of them are kind of bouncing off each other across the backgammon table. like, oh boy, is that good. I kind of find that to be,
I really, the only thing I'd say about it, and I'm sure this has been brought up before by others, but like it's a little too close to Goldfinger at that end. I think it's a great way to end it with Gominda, crushing the dice.
Yes.
But boy, that's like, oh man, that is such a Goldfinger moment there. I mean, with that, not even thinly disguised, but it works for that scene. It really does.
Is it a thin line between homage and ripoff?
Yeah, it's all but it's like you said, it's such a good scene. You let him get away with that. It's like, okay, I'm gonna let you have that one. Yeah.
But again, that's another great scene. Again, it's a very Fleming-esque scene where he's taking on his opponent over a game. It could be a poker table, it could be a baccarat game. But here it's backgammon. I think the scene works. It really works well. Yeah. And by the way, then you have that moment where he meets up with Magda, Christina Wayborn's character.
Oh, I think she's terrific.
She is. She's absolutely stunning. She still is, by the way. This Octopussy's got, I think, it's got some of the best looking Bond women, frankly. They're all stunning.
They really are. Yeah.
When I was, I used to watch this film. I was sitting.
Yeah, I know.
Seriously, like Charlie Brown with the little hearts above.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
She's amazing. But again, I love that he sits down, Sotheby's, £500,000, and again, that kind of little tit for tat, the little playful banter back and forth.
I love the line where she says, Carmel, he suggests a trade, the egg for your life, and then Bond replies, I heard the price of eggs was going up. I said, isn't that a little high? That's a great line.
Totally.
And then her escape from his room via the balcony, it's very elegant. It's not like this crazy fast escape. It's really elegant, and the Barry music just swells up. It's terrific.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Well, first of all, I think the Barry score. I don't know I wouldn't call this one of my favorites because there's
oddly I wouldn't either. I think maybe he might have been on orders because of the Battle of the Bonds thing. Because I think there's a liberal use in this particular film for the James Bond theme. I think they wanted to slam that home. And but it has the All Time High as a song and the instrumental are beautiful.
Yes. Oh yes, absolutely. Right, that's when I think it really shines. Right. But yeah, the scene when he and her just sitting again, your guest is waiting at the table, and then he goes to sit down. That's a sort of a classic Bond moment. It's almost like going all the way back to Miss Tarot, where Bond has to flirt with he knows she's up to no good, but he has to flirt because they're. Again, it's another classic moment. He's trying to get information from her. She's trying to get the egg from him. So they're again playing off of each other. Who's wanting up who. So great. And then the romantic scene is great. The music is great. And then, like you said, that great escape is just phenomenal.
Yeah,
like you said, it's elegant. It's acrobatic but elegant. The music is perfect. Oh, my
it's
God,
almost it's practically beautiful.
It is. It really is. Oh my God, it is. It is very. It's stunning. The whole moment is stunning. Man, I am gonna gush big time over this. This is gonna be a.
And they really make India look beautiful in this film because I know there is a side of India which is the high or there's a lot of poverty, but they actually shoot the beautiful part of India here, and it looks terrific.
Yes. Yeah, it does. I will say this too. I think maybe one of the reasons why the film is not as popular as I think it ought to be, it could be one of those things where if the location is not your cup of tea, then it's not going to be your favorite. I think when we did You Only Live Twice, I said, movie's good, but if you're not a fan of Japan or the Japanese location, well. That's it, because they don't go anywhere else, So yeah, I agree with you. I think they do show the nice posh side of India, the hotel, even Bond just check. I love scenes of Bond checking into a hotel. I really do. Again, it's that little Bond moment that just works so well. The location is great. The place is great. Later on, when they do a chase and he's kind of running through, and there's one guy laying on the bed of nails and one guy, I I've heard people kind of have mixed feelings on that. I think it's fine. I like it. It probably, like, is that bordering on, like, almost cartoonish? I don't know. I'm not. It's hard to say. I've never been there, so I don't know.
I've seen the movie many times, and that bed of nails that guy's laying on. I noticed when you see more later on, he takes the guy, throws him on his back, and he hits the bed of nails.
Yeah,
I could tell. You could tell some of them are rubber. They're kind of bent and stuff. But it's like because I've seen the movie so many times.
Yeah. They don't hide it much, exactly.
Yeah, but it was fine. It was fine like the first 5 times, and then all of a sudden I went, "Hey!"
Right.
Yeah.
I love the part when he takes the sword out of the guy's throat, whatever, he's got the sword, and he once he fights him off, and what does he say?
You better put that back yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's vintage James Bond.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my god, I love it. Oh my god, I seriously, that's just like my new favorite.
You know what's interesting? In 2012, here in Atlanta at the Plaza Theater, they showed all the James Bond films at the Skyfall, and they had an encore night where you could pick any of the Bond films for an encore, and they chose Octopussy, and I was like, really? That's kind of cool.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, can you believe that? Because like you said, on the internet you see all this, well, it's it always comes in at like number 20 or something, or it's like near the bottom of the list,
Yeah.
And but it's not. It's a great entry into the Bond series. I think I like it because it's also what makes it different from me is that it seems 2 halves. The first half is sort of like a bit of a romp, but in a good way. And then the second half is more of a taunt suspense thriller. But luckily, the 2 halves do merge and they do fit. So
yes,
I think that's why I like it. I like the way. I guess what I'm saying is I like the way it changes gears. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. And again, kind of sticking with what I was saying for Your Eyes Only. I love the tone, and there are moments when, like, the tone is so oddly. I shouldn't say oddly, but I mean it's so kind of down to earth and realistic. I mean, again, you have these sort of over the top moments, but then you have like when Bond is trying to just make his way to the base, and literally standing there hitchhiking. Like, I mean, that scene when the teenagers pull up, and they're like, "Oh yeah, come on," and they take off without him, and they wave,
yeah,
and he flips him off, like. I love that. I think that is great. I mean, again, what's the big deal about it? Nothing, but it's just kind of just like a real life moment where, again, like he doesn't, like Bond doesn't just kind of, wave and some good looking girl pulls over, he slams on the brakes, he jumps in, hey, you going my way?
Yeah.
Like, again, this is a realistic moment. So, and he's like just stranded in the middle of nowhere. Like, there's no music there. He just has to run down the street. I mean, it's great. We might as well talk about the lead, the Bond girl, and again, kind of going back to how I think they very smartly play to Bond's age. I kind of love the fact that Maud Adams is his contemporary age-wise, and the fact that they have a little history together, I think, might even help a little bit. But I think the chemistry they have is spectacular.
It is.
I love, you know what I mean? I love I love her character. I love her character in this. Very smart, very capable. She's done this whole operation by herself. And Bond comes along, and like the theme song is going to now ring in my mind. I love the lyrics of the theme song for that. I mean, the theme song All Time High has always been one of my favorites. Partially just I think it's a beautiful song. I mean, it plays very well. When Barry uses it for his theme, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But again, there is some nostalgia factor, I think, that kind of goes along with it because it was my first James Bond. but the lyrics to the song, they go so perfectly with the romance on screen that I think it works perfectly. So again, when I sort of listen to the lyrics of the song, and then I watch Bond and Octopussy on screen, I'm like, there you go. I mean, this is 2 kind of almost star-crossed thrown in together, but they do fit so perfectly. I mean, they are 2 of a kind. So
yeah,
I think the connection is very believable, and I love. I mean, seriously, we had like I mentioned the other Bond girls. The one Bond girl from the pre-title, You had Magda, who he's with later, and both of them a little too young, a little too out of his league. But that kind of works because, I mean, seriously, one is his fellow agent, so there's the connection there. Magda's trying to get something from him, and once she gets it, it's kind of like, okay, goodbye. Like, you know, it's not like she's not chasing him around like a puppy dog afterwards. She's kind of done with him.
Right.
But then he gets with Octopussy, and then it sort of just works better because, again, they just seem more in line with each other. So it's very easy to believe it.
I will say this. I love the backstory of Octopussy. I love the way Maud Adams plays it. This is probably the part where I get a little critical of the film.
Okay.
Only because I think that the character of Octopussy is really interesting, but I think woefully underused in the film. I love the build-up to her character. I think it's great the way they build her up. And then she's introduced. She has a couple scenes of Bond. And then she kind of disappears from the movie for a good chunk. I mean, she's there, and she's on the train. She's at the circus. There's nothing really going on with her. And she kind of gets lost in the story. And I understand, the story is not totally about her. But I always kind of wish they had fleshed out Octopussy a bit more somehow. I just feel that... I feel like there's potential there to be... Like, this could have been up to, like, a status of Casino Royale. With Vesper and Bond, it could have been that high of a dynamic. But here,
I'll tell you what, though, I'll give you a counter argument.
Okay.
Well, first of all, I like that they do give her. Not only do they give her, well, actually, I'll back up a little more. The film is called Octopussy. There was a book, Ian Fleming's Octopussy, which was actually 2 short stories. It was Octopussy and Property of a Lady.
Right.
Property of a Lady is obviously the story. It's the Sotheby's bit and the auction house, so they worked that in perfectly. And the short story is the story she tells about Major Smythe.
Right, Dexter Smythe.
Dexter Smythe. Bond went to arrest him. He actually commits suicide.
Which is what all those tough guys did back in the day, like Hemingway and even Pedro Armendáriz. It's not a way to do. It's not a way to go out though, man. But yeah, that was a tough guy thing to do for a while.
Yeah. And interestingly, in the story, again, he's the octopus lover. He's living somewhere. I think the way he commits suicide in the book is he actually just kind of lets the octopus poison him, etc. That's how he does it. Yeah. So anyway. So they work that into her backstory here. So she has that backstory, the connection with her father. So her and Bond have sort of an instant connection, which works. And then they go on more and they tell a little more of her backstory, where she talks about how she created the circus or her smuggling years, etc. To what you said about how she's sort of removed from the story for a while, that kind of reminds me of Tracy a little bit, because Bond has the romance with Tracy, and then she goes away. And then suddenly she reappears right after he's escaped from Piz Gloria, and they escape together. And I kind of feel like there's a little bit of that here, where you have kind of the Bond Octopussy romance, and then he kind of the attack on Octopussy's island happens, and then he kind of just takes that opportunity to just sort of vanish, and then they don't reunite until the moment at the circus, where he's dressed like the clown, he has to defuse the bomb. And she jumps in and saves the day because she knows James Bond. She trusts him. She believes him. So I think that is actually, like, could she have been a little more involved with the story than she is? Yeah, I mean, she's not that far away. Like, you see her like on the train doing some stuff, and nothing exciting. But yeah, the big
getting a massage
that moment. Yeah, right. Well.
No, valid points. I think it works better in Unmanned Secret Service for whatever reason.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. I know what you're getting at. It's a good comparison. I don't know, maybe because it's like a bigger... I think because in Majesty, she owns like a big part of that first half of that film. And then she disappears for like a good part of the second act, and then she's back, at the end of the second act into the third. So
it's a little more jarring that
I think that it gives her more of a... You get more of her character, by the end it's not as you're satisfied, you know who she is, whereas I still feel like there's more things to know about Octopussy that I don't. What's great though, the scene between the two of them when they get into, she's kind of trying to get him to join her. Yeah. And maybe the acting's a little bit like old school, but it's okay for what it is, you know.
Yeah. I that's another great scene that I really love. I mean, I'm a sucker for those moments where Bond kind of does one of those, like, where he kind of grabs her and plants one on her.
Right. Well, that's great movie stuff, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it's classic movie stuff. But yeah, the dialogue, I think, kind of works. I mean, I kind of like the idea.
This is not.
I think that was.
I think it's. I'm not. Getting. I don't think I'm blaming the actors. I think it's maybe the way John Glenn staged it a little bit. I find it a little bit. I don't want to be mean here, but it's like a little soap opera, just a little bit.
I
paid assassin for what I am, you know. It's just a little bit, you know.
And I think that's perfectly fair. Right. Soap opera is a kind of a good way to put it. It is a little melodramatic and
I love melodrama. I mean, I love old films that are like that a lot, but I don't know, it's just a little weird here, a little bit. Yeah. It's almost there. It's like this almost great scene to me, you know. It's good, you know.
Yeah, I can't argue with that. I mean, it is it's, again, a little melodramatic, a little over the top. But again, I kind of feel like, and that it could be totally nostalgia. I feel like I'm watching that with 14-year-old eyes, where I'm kind of like, wow, that's how grown-ups talk. Okay, cool, you know?
We are. All you have to say is we are two of a kind, and that's it, huh?
There you go.
And you know what I love? The follow-up to that is that great buzzsaw fight scene, I think. Yes. It's so inventive, and that's a problem we're going to have with the next film, View to a Kill, is the lack of inventiveness, in my personal view. Because like this is something like, they're going to have a fight scene, but they're adding a new element, and that's cool, you know? That's what you got to do, you know? Yeah. I'm not saying you have to reinvent the wheel, but you do have to give us something a little different.
I mean, there are a lot of great moments in this where they are saying to themselves, okay, look, how can we take advantage of our location? How can we throw some sort of local color into things? So, right, you could have just had goons show up with guns, or, you know, and just have a fight, whatever.
That happens in A View to a Kill. And with the, you know, and it's just like, right. And it's like, I guess it's okay, you know, but it's like, you know, there's nothing, I've seen this all before, you know, and better.
Exactly. Nothing new. Yeah. Right. Here, that whole buzzsaw thing, I mean, that's really, really cool. And by the way, too, and kind of getting back to what I was saying about how they kind of use Roger Moore's age, or they don't shy away from it. I like how even in the fight scenes here, like, again, he's sort of, you know, as opposed to trying to be a blunt force, you know, instrument going forward and fisticuffs with these bad guys, it's more, you know, he's using their own momentum against them. He's moving in a much more fluid way, where again he's kind of counterattacking with so that's why I think it's his experience that kind of takes over at that moment.
Agreed, and I think it's one of Moore's better fight scenes, I think.
You know?
Yeah.
I mean, even when he was younger, I always felt that his fight scenes were just a little clunky.
Yeah.
He was never really like. I mean, I don't think anybody would ever accuse Roger Moore of being a very physical guy. You know,
right.
Like he's even said, he goes, if they ever say, "Do you want your stunt guy to do it?" He goes, "Yeah." I mean, like he's never been one to want to do his own stunts.
Right.
You know?
Right.
He's never been a particularly athletic guy. He's always been kind of a man of leisure.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it's amazing that I feel like in a film where he's, again, showing his age and he's much older, the fight scenes seem to be choreographed much better and kind of work with him. So, again, just smart on John Glenn and the filmmakers for this, because they seem to know, you know, again, he's older, but let's take advantage of that or use that correctly. There was something I meant to say when we were talking about For Your Eyes Only, but it's just as valid here. You know, I've always sort of given Roger Moore 2 points of credit that I think people can't really deny. One of them, as I said, I think it was back, you know, when we were doing his first view, and I said, you know, he was the lightheartedness of the Roger Moore films and his charm. It carries the series through a time when audiences are not clamoring for gritty spy dramas like From Russia with Love, etc. But the other thing that is amazing to me about him is that usually when the series or when the franchise wants to kind of course correct and things are kind of getting a little too silly, so they want to get a little more down and dirty, it usually happens when they bring in a different actor. Roger Moore is the only time I can think of where he's able to do the silly, over-the-top fun movies, but then when they want to switch gears and get a little more gritty, he can do that too.
Yeah, it's pretty good, man. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, no one flinched. No one. He does For Your Eyes Only, and then again in Octopussy, and he's got fun moments, but he's got serious moments, and he's believable in both.
I mean, he was always self-depreciating, but the guy was a total pro. And you watch, like, he had a lot of experience. He did many seasons of The Saint, and he did the Persuaders, and a lot of television and film work before he, starred in Live and Let Die. So, he had a hell of a lot of experience, and I think it serves him well in these later films, too. There's a way that they dole out exposition here, which I think is terrific. Bond's a prisoner in the palace, but he's got that pen that Q gave him, which he's able to melt the bars and get out. And then he's listening in for the bug on the Fabergé egg. That's a great way to get exposition out, because Bond's listening in, but he can't quite hear everything. And then Magda's using the hairdryer upstairs, so that it interrupts with the signal. And so, Bond has to go to the door and listen and so forth. Yes. That's a way you want to dole out exposition, where the audience all of a sudden, now they're really curious to what these guys are saying inside.
Yes.
And that's so much better than like what we'll get in the next film. Which is like where exposition is just doled out in one scene and it's supposed to be good, it's like, wow. Yeah. No.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you too. I agree with that. I like the fact that they only give you sort of just enough to give him something to work with.
Right.
It's like,
you don't want to dole it all out. You want to keep. You want to have part of a mystery going on too with any film, even if it's a romantic comedy. Yeah.
Yeah. And by the way, this also stemmed from a great, again, very Dr. No-ish moment where he's invited to dinner. He has to wear a black tie.
Oh, I wanted to ask you about that dinner, because this is a year before Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where they have that banquet feast. I always wondered if they kind of saw this and say, hey, let's do that, but times 10,
Yeah, maybe.
It's possible.
Maybe.
It's possible.
Here's a little trivia. When he takes the eye out and eats it?
Yeah.
Do you know what that is?
I know it's supposed to be stuffed sheep's head. I guess a hard-boiled egg? I don't know.
It's a hard-boiled egg.
Okay. Very good. All right. We first arrived in India. That is that neat little chase scene, which is more of the rompish, and that's where they kind of do all the funny little jokes. They kind of it's weird. It's kind of the movie gets it out of its system, and then it's done with it in a way. Yeah. Well, after the Tarzan yell, but after that Tarzan yell, it's pretty much it's pretty much just got the right tone, right? For the rest of the film. Yeah.
It's so funny how the awkward, goofy, jokey stuff. I swear I could like do an edit of this movie and just pluck those little things out, and I like it could be just joke free, and I don't think anybody would ever know the difference.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, otherwise that scene is great. I love the fact that they're doing a chase on these little tuk-tuks.
That's right. See that that's another example of doing it where there's something a little different. And I've never seen a chase with one of those, and it's it's the Bond crew, the old school guys, and it's spectacular.
Taking advantage of the location.
Yeah,
I mean, you would see these things all over.
Yes. Moving forward over the film, I love the train stuff. I think the train stuff is great.
Yeah.
I love it all. The stunt work, the tension, the action. Sometimes people, I noticed in this, they were a big problem with Steven Berkoff and his portrayal of General Orlov. I like it. I think he does come in over the top in that very first scene, but he has to have a certain bravado, because he's just. I think Steve Berkoff is a very smart guy. He was a playwright and an actor, and I think he realizes what he's giving there is just kind of sort of an exposition. So he's kind of playing it big, just to make it more interesting. And it's up to, that being said, it's up to John Glenn to say, no, Steven, you're going a little too, just down a little bit, So if that performance is in there, that's John Glenn approved, you know what I'm saying? Or Albert Broccoli approved, whatever. So a lot of times, like, people pick on the actors, you're picking on the wrong person, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, unless the actor's, running the show, then it's the director that should be called Default. But yeah, but then later on, I think once he settles down into the role, I think he's great.
I think he is a spectacular actor. I mean,
Yeah.
it's funny that he
And
was the bad guy of the 80s.
and yeah, he shows up.
mean-
I think it was a year later. He showed up as the bad guy in Beverly Hills Cop, which he was terrific in. Yeah.
Yeah. And he also was the bad guy in Rambo.
Yes, very
Right?
memorably in that too. Yes.
This guy, in a few short years, he took on James Bond, Axel Foley, and Rambo.
Yeah.
But I actually think he's great. I think he is another kind of unsung part of this film.
Yeah,
Because again, the opening is over the top, but I mean, probably not nearly. See, I like the fact that it's almost like if you compare him to like a Drax, where he's very subtle and understated, but the plot is sort of over the top. I kind of almost feel like they kind of meet in the middle, where the plot's a little more realistic and he's a little over the top, so it kind of almost comes together a little bit better.
Yeah, and if you knew nothing about this movie going in, and then that he would seemingly seem to be the main villain at that point. You think, oh well, this guy must be the villain of the piece, but he's really he's really just part of the spokes in the wheel.
Yeah. Yeah, right, and it's interesting too, because when you get into, I noticed that when some of the films try to get into sort of ensemble villains, it can be tricky.
Yeah.
But here I think it works, because you kind of I find you have two strong villains with two distinct motivations that come together to form. Again, they join forces because they have similar interests, and it kind of works.
It does. Yeah. And
incidentally, by the way, his demise at the border, I like that a lot too. That to me is kind of like, that's a taste of that classic spy stuff.
Yes,
classic
yeah.
Cold War, machine gun down right at the border.
And it's ironic that he was shot by his own troops. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, where East meets West and everything. I mean, I like that a lot.
I also like his mad chase in the car when he's trying to beat the train. To try to get there.
Yes.
And they decide to go with not hearing his voice, but just showing him, in the car screaming. I think that's really effective and well done.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. So, I mean, honestly, seriously, John Glenn. I mean, I kind of feel like he kind of gets lost in the shuffle sometimes, but he's an extremely capable director.
Oh, absolutely. Sometimes absolutely brilliant, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I tell you. By the way, I met John Glenn.
I remember you telling me, yes.
And I'll tell you, actually, and this is gonna. I'm glad you sort of reminded me of that, because when I talked to him, his responses to what I was saying surprised me, because I met him at the Honor Majesties. He was second unit director for Honor Majesties, so he was at the big celebration. I went over to him and talked to him. Could not have been nicer. Super nice guy. And I said to him, I said, I love your work and everything. And he said, he asked me, he said, what's your favorite? I said, Octopussy is my favorite of the John Glenns. And so, and I said to him, Octopussy to me is the most Hitchcockian of the Bond films. I think it's got a flair of Hitchcock. And I'm thinking that I'm really flattering him. And he said, he liked it. He said, thank you. And then he goes, what I really like about Hitchcock was his humor. And I really like the humor and I remember, and I was sort of laughing because I'm like, I was thinking I'm flattering him by downplaying the humor in some of his movies.
Right.
Almost to where I had my own theory that maybe the humor was not even his doing. Maybe somebody else said you got to throw in a couple of jokes or whatever.
Right.
Nope. John Glenn likes the jokes. He loves it, so.
That Tarzan yell, man.
I wish I could remember the conversation better, because he actually said humor twice, where I was like, I thought I was steering him away from that idea, and he was like, no, he likes humor.
Then I think you went, you have a good evening, huh? It's great to see Bond. It's great. That idea, I mean, it's kind of ludicrous, but terrific. His tires get blown out, and then he's able to travel on the tracks, on the train, to catch up to it. And, you can tell the film is a little sped up and so forth, but it's just so much fun, and the notion of it is great, so.
See, I like that a lot, and honestly, I kind of feel like, again, I like it when it's kind of ludicrous, but ludicrous because it's kind of happening in the real world.
Yes.
Like, if that happened in Moonraker, you wouldn't even have blinked. The fact that it's happening in this movie makes you kind of go, all right, you're kind of getting a little ahead of yourself there. But I feel like it works. I feel like it works pretty well.
I think it was someone, I wish I could remember who said that, had this quote, and I'm paraphrasing, but it said, Bond films are its best when they venture a little bit into the improbable, but not the impossible. And that's a good way, I think, a good rule of thumb for anyone that's maybe writing a James Bond novel or a screenplay,
Absolutely.
You kind of keep that in the back of your head,
Yes, and I think that's a great way to sum this part up. I think that's improbable, but not impossible.
Yeah.
The fact that it actually sort of happens.
Yeah.
I feel like if you could look at it, you see the car, you see it on the tracks, it's happening. It's not, they're not CGI in that car onto the tracks. So yeah, right. It's playing that line of highly improbable, but I'll buy it,
Yeah, and that's the thing. There's so much stuff in this film. There's interesting characters, great action, great everything almost, and it's just it's a terrific film. It really is.
Yeah,
and,
honestly, I almost find that one of the best parts of that is Steven Berkoff stopping, looking at the car, and he just turns his head almost like this crazed look of he can't believe what he's seeing. And he just goes, "Follow that car."
yeah, that's great.
I love that.
yeah. And there's also great, and his when he meets his demise, and he hits the ground, and he's still trying to get to that train. He's crawling, and it's just like he wants to get on that train so bad, but yeah,
not giving up. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my God, such a good scene. What do we think about the finale?
I think it's terrific. Somebody said, that Octopussy has more climaxes than a porno, and it kind of does. You got your the bomb, and then the attack on the palace, and then you go, no, it's not over yet. We're going to the plane, and which is actually the stuff in the plane. Believe it or not, was the first stuff filmed. Which is interesting. I was like, wow, you got this. Wow, if the movie completely sucks, we got this great ending.
Right?
We got some great footage of the stunt guys.
And by the way, I do kind of like it's kind of the same thing I said for The Spy Who Loved Me. I like it when the climax kind of escalates a little bit, and we kind of have several peaks before we're done. And this one's a great example of that. That you're absolutely right. That plane sequence is terrific.
And I also love, just even before that, I love all the Octopussy aerobatics, her and her team infiltrating Karmal Khan's palace, and that's all great stuff, And I love there's one moment where the music comes in, and then you see the girls all flipping, and it's kind of an exciting moment in the film, where everything's kind of coming together,
Yeah, I like that a lot, and I think I like the idea of it a lot more than I like the execution.
Okay.
Because I think that almost sort of going in with what I said about how I thought they worked with more perfectly, where again his movement was much more fluid, it's edited well, etc. There are moments here where I'm kind of like, that could have been edited a little bit better. Some of the girls are kind of just doing stuff.
Yeah, there's one girl, you see it, and you can tell she's probably not very acrobatic, and she's just sitting there punching one of these guys, but kind of pretending to do it. It's kind of in the background, You probably know what I'm talking about,
Yes, I do. I know exactly what you're talking about.
It's right here.
There's some very awkward moments in that.
Yeah.
But
and also,
probably a little editing could have fixed it.
Also, his swing from the balloon to the balcony is not. They edit it, and you're kind of okay, that didn't work, but let's get on with the movie, Yeah.
Yes, right. There's a little magic of editing there to kind of sort of make that work. By the way, speaking of that, that's actually also one of my favorite Q moments. I like the fact that this film has a nice, full-blown Q scene in the middle.
Yeah.
We see a couple gadgets in the background, and then
the latest liquid crystal TV.
There you go. Perfect image.
Yeah, and then he goes, "Yeah, would that be allowed? I don't think that would be allowed nowadays, huh? You're not gonna have,
no,
you don't have Daniel Craig zooming in, right?
No, definitely not. But I like how Q shows up later, and not to fast forward, but License to Kill. One of my kind of grumbles is I feel like they don't use Q in a very authentic way. Here, I think he's very authentic. Where, again, he's kind of it's the same old Q, doesn't like being in the field, but you put him in a situation where my other good guy got killed off. I'm by myself. Q jumps in to help out. I love that. I think that's great. Him driving or steering the balloon, etc., and kind of has a little moment where he steers in and takes out one of the guys on the way down. Love that. That's really good.
I'm gonna give this might see, given my past scores and what I've given other films, I'm gonna give Octopussy a solid 8. It's a great film. It has a lot of great stuff. The only thing I'd say about it is that the main title character of the film, Octopussy, is given a little bit of the shaft in the movie. I mean, she has some great scenes, but she kind of disappears, and she's such an interesting character that I wish I could have seen more of that. It's almost hard for me to give this an 8. I'm almost like hitting almost a 9, but I think 8 is good. It's a great film. I'd say, yeah. I guess I don't care for some of the way they handled the some of the melodramatic scene. I felt that was a little awkward and stilted, and it's kind of a shame because it's an important moment in the film. But yeah, I think I'll give this film a solid 8.
I'm kind of having a little personal victory. I think this is the first time in the history of doing these reviews.
Okay.
I'm scoring it higher than Scott.
Wow, look at
that. I'm giving it a 9.
Okay. I'm close. I'm close. I'm knocking on 9's door right there.
There you go. I nudged out just a little bit. But yeah, I think this is, like I said, a tremendous film. And honestly, I think it's just shy of being flawless. Like a flawless James Bond classic adventure. Just a couple little things here and there I would have done a little bit differently. But it is stellar. It has all the things I want in a James Bond film. I think the tone is just right. So when things they hit that sort of improbable level, it's still believable. It's got the exoticism, the romance that I like, exotic locations, good life. I mean, all the good stuff that makes a Bond film unique, and not just a generic action film, with the action still being great. So, and again, I still fall back on this idea that the structure, that mystery that is set in place in the beginning, boom, just aces. And I really wish they did more of that, as opposed to getting called into M's office. I think he's the bad guy. Go get him. So yeah, I think it's a 9, and frankly, I think it's just shy of possibly being a perfect 10. But I'll give it a 9.
First thing that came to my head was Tarzan yell. So I'm going to say that. I was kind of almost thinking about the Octopussy scene, but it's not my least favorite part, but not by far. Yeah, that Tarzan yell thing. It's just a little awkward and out of place. I mean, like, I know it was funny back in the day, and it still is to a degree, but it kind of spoils the tension and suspense of that scene. And I know this is supposed to be like a fun part of the film, but yeah, we could live without that.
I can't argue with that Tarzan yell. In fact, it sort of makes me wonder. I wish they had like an opening night edit with all the goofy jokes, and then they'll do okay, now that that's done, here's the real version of the film that goes on the Blu-ray without all that stuff. For my least favorite part, I'm tempted to go with the same thing. In terms of, though, what I would do differently to try to fix, or just what I would have done a little differently. The attack on Octopussy's palace, the girls, again, it's a little awkward in a lot of places, and there's moments where it just feels like the run, jump, and throw like a girl Olympics. A little tweaking, a little editing probably could have fixed that, and probably that's what I would have done. Like a couple different camera angles, a little quick editing could have just, not left them out there so poorly. The little tweaks here and there could have fixed that.
I'm gonna go with Magda going out the balcony. I don't know. I just really love that. And I was gonna say, that acrojet, which is awesome. I mean, it's the coolest thing, and that's a great sequence. But I just love the the way it moves and the way it's choreographed, even the sound of her fabric as she's coming down the balcony, and the Barry score. I just love that whole part. Sometimes it's just the simple things.
It's hard. It really is hard to pick just sort of one thing, and I'm really tempted to kind of just talk about again that opening mystery of the two knife throwers chasing the clown through the night. It's such a great thing, and it really does set the whole mystery in motion. And I really want to sort of prop that up as being the thing about this film that kind of sets it apart. But if I have to go with one scene, I'm going to go with the Sotheby's scene. And again, it's a very understated moment, but honestly, it really is kind of that perfect. That scene to me encapsulates so many good things. The use of the Fleming story. Again, Bond doing battle in a very different sort of in a different arena. I just love that, and again, the fact that I think Roger Moore sort of just looks so incredibly comfortable there really shows how they're using his age and experience to their benefit. It just works so well. So I'll give it to that one. Octopussy, again, no secret that it's a big one on my list. Easily one of my favorites, and so. Another good one, my friend.
Yeah, and I like it almost as much as you do, but we're short by one Octopussy hair. You're not going with that, are you?
I outdid Scott. I got a higher score than him this time. I think
you're gonna start noticing a trend.
I thought I was gonna have to wait till the Brosnan years to actually outscore you, but. It happened. So
yeah.
All right, my friend. Thank you again, and I will see you here next time.
All right. Thank you very much for having me. Always a great time.
James Bond.